Hey guys, Daniel James here, and today is the 9th of April. Thought I'd do a blog today because I did promise a while back that I'd do another one and talk and answer questions that you guys might have for me, and I'd do in a blog. Then I got mega busy, and then it didn't happen, so it's happening now. Before I get to that, a few little things. Firstly, I just uploaded my my complete 9 overview, which is looking at Battery 4, Monarch, which is the new analog synth, the Giant piano, and some of the compressors. Although I do cock up a bit when talking about the Dynamics processor, which I later learned was basically a compressor and a gate put together. That's all it was. I just looked at it and freaked out is all. What else? Okay, so yeah, done those videos. There are more videos coming, but after this video today, I may go silent for a few weeks, just because I'm extremely busy on a few projects, and they all have deadlines which happen. All the deadlines are around the same time, so I'm going to be focusing on those pretty solidly for the next few weeks. But yeah, there are more videos coming. I spoke to someone from a company today, and they asked if I could have a look at some of their products for a future video. And so I'm talking to them about that, and that should be cool for you guys. What else is new? Today, D-Blue Glitch, which is one of the best glitch plugins. It was one of the first as well. Glitch plugin came out today. But the second version of it, Glitch 2, I can't pronounce the company name, I'm sorry. You can check my Twitter feed, I've posted the link on there. But yeah, they've released D-Blue Glitch 2, and it's now on Mac, which is amazing. I have got Stutter Edit, which is considerably more expensive, but occasionally when you use it, like it's a bit sloppy. Like you'll push, like even just you push the key for a gate, you know, like a 64th note gate, and it'll start slightly off the beat, and then it will end with a really sloppy cut. Whereas this is boom, da, 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 and it's, you know, your cuts are there. Also today, Arts Acoustic Reverb. Those of you who watch my videos know I use this a lot. Arts Acoustic Reverb have finally released the 64-bit version, which was one of the only reasons I haven't yet upgraded Ableton Live to 64-bit. That and the ability to do video. They haven't put video in Ableton Live up to 64-bit, but that also means that I can use Cubase in 64-bit now, which is something I've been dying to try for a long time. And the only reason I didn't was because like a lot of my sound is based around the reverb I use. So now that's 64-bit, that's all exciting. What else is new? I got a new chair. It's not what you would call like a studio chair. You know, it's not like one of those ones with the curved back or anything. It's just this big cushy chair, and the best thing about it is, I can just lay back like this. It's a recliner, so I can, you know, while I'm waiting for something to bounce, I can just lean back, put my legs up, and, you know, do whatever it is I do, tweet, read a book, write poems. So yeah, that's what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. Not much from me, but then I've got like 6 more videos that I'm dying to do, and they'll get done. Yes, so let me answer these questions that I promised I'd do. So I picked like some of the more common ones, the ones that were recurring. So the first one, I've got, the names I've put are the ones I've just copied, but a few people asked the same ones. So if you ask this question as well as this person, I did read it, but that's the reason it got chosen. So John Taylor says, love your music. Can you post your gear, computer and specs sometimes? Would love to know your gear choices. Do you use Vienna Ensemble Pro? Do you work on PC or Mac? So I work on a Mac Pro, a 2008 Mac Pro, which is a 2.8 gigahertz dual quad core. So that's 8 processors. That's an 8 octo core, 8 core pro. I've got 8 gigs of RAM, not the most. No, I don't use Vienna. I don't use the Ensemble Pro. I do it all just in the box. So that's why some of my videos have got lots of clicks and pops and stuff. But a lot of the way I compose is I like to work with audio files. That's one of the main reasons I use Ableton Live, is even with orchestral parts. Sometimes I'll do like a MIDI section of orchestra and I'll bounce that down to audio and then manipulate it in ways that you couldn't do with a live orchestra and things like that, and things you can't do with MIDI. like slicing. You know, you can't get a sliced sound with MIDI with a lot of processing and stuff. So, you know, I cut down the need for a lot of RAM that way. And when I use when I'm composing in MIDI, I don't have like a big template. All I have is 5 stem buses that are already set out. So I've got like one, and they've all got empty instances of contact. So I've got one string bus, which is just an empty instance of contact with all the MIDI channels. It's an empty MIDI track. An empty instance of contact with all its 16 MIDI tracks that are empty, ready to go. So, you know, when I need a string, I'll go into that empty contact and load in the string patch I need. And with Contact's, you know, background loading thing, it's literally a case of click, click, and it's loaded. So, you know, because there's no waiting times on it to load. So I found that to be a lot more useful to me than having lots of empty MIDI tracks and using system resources before I've even started. So, you know, I load as I go. So I've got strings, brass, percussion, wind normally turns into choir and Project Alpha stuff, synth and extras. Did I say percussion? If I didn't say percussion as well. And they're all just empty instances of contact except synth, which is Omnisphere. I just have that loaded all the time because it's easy to make a patch in there. So if I've got a patch idea, like an idea for a synth sound, I could make it in another synth. I mean, unless there's a very specific sound I want, I'll just go straight to Omnisphere because it's very quick to mock up the idea of a synth I want. Yeah, so that's the answer to that question. So Brian Sladek and Cody Still both asked, how did I get my initial start as a composer? And has this always been my full-time occupation? No, this has not always been my full-time occupation. I used to work at Woolworths as a till boy, and then I worked at the Odeon, which is a cinema. I used to work, which actually, if you need to get a part-time job, if you want to be a film composer and you need a part-time job, go try and work at a cinema or a theatre, I think they call them in America. Because what I used to do, and I hope like none of my old bosses are watching this, but what I would used to do is I would just sneak off, like if you were on cleaning duty, like I would sneak off and then just watch like 20 minutes of a film, you know, and I could take in the music that was that was playing. And it was just, you know, really easy access to lots of free film. So I used to do that. But then in 2009, 2010, I started doing this full time. How did I get my start? My start as a composer? Well, first off, I used to program video games, only, you know, amateurish kind of thing. And I was working on one project once, and I was making a project and I needed a composer. So I went on this forum, which was it was a Dark Basic community forum, and I put out a message saying I need a composer. And the person who responded to it was Aaron Frensley, who I now own Hybrid 2 with. This is actually how we met, and this was like 15 years ago or something silly like that. And he started writing the music for it. It was a total Metal Gear rip-off. And he started doing the composing. And then he was using, I think, the Sam... was it Project Sam? The Sam horns. And there was something about the fact that it was like he was making music that sounded like real orchestra. I mean, nowadays, if you listen to it, it wouldn't. But I was blown away by the fact that he, with a keyboard, could make music that sounded like a real orchestra. And I begged and pleaded him to teach me how he did it. And then fast forward a few years, now it's the other way around. Now Aaron does all the programming, and we're actually planning on some point soon making a game together with him programming and me doing the music. So it's like over time the roles have completely reversed. But yeah, so all I did was the best way to get started in doing film music is to the way I got my start was to hang around filmmaking message boards. There's no point hanging around, if you want jobs, there's no point hanging around a music forum, because all there is a sea of competition. The best way to do it is find things that interest. If you want to do film, be an active member of a film message board, people who are making films, and not just be there, you know, don't just go there and spam, you know, hey, new composer looking for work, you know, because that's what everybody does. You know, actively become a friend to these people, not like a fake friend. Don't go there, you know, with the ulterior motive of I'm going to get work by doing this. Just go there and be an active member, you know, be interested in what you're doing. You know, if you're not interested in films, don't hang around film message boards, go to game message boards, people making games, and just get in with the indie people. I must admit at the beginning I did quite a lot of work for free, which you shouldn't really do. Because if you're working for free, you're taking a potential earning off of someone who could get paid for it, because a developer will always go for the cheapest option. That's just the way business works. You go for the cheapest option, which is called undercutting. But yeah, if you just need something for your portfolio, find someone who you think's a really good developer, but they haven't had their break yet. Get in, make friends with them. Not fake friends again. Be genuine. If they make something that interests you, share that passion with them. Because if my experience has taught me anything, is that if you've got a passion for something, people pick up on your passion for it, and and then they feed off it, and people tend to want to work with people who like the same shit as they do, and you can tell when someone's faking passion and when someone really wants to do something. So yeah, I hung around message forums and I did a few little short films. I was terrible, but I needed the experience, so I got the experience through. And then I did my first thing of note was I did a Metal Gear Solid fan film. I didn't get paid for that. No one did. It was it was my first feature film. I got to work with a really cool singer called Aoife Ferry, who sang on the original Metal Gear games. So for me, that blew my mind. And then from that led to another little bit of work. And then that bit of work got me a connection with that director, which got me more work. And then that director had friends, got me more work. And then, before I knew it, I had a portfolio of work that I'd done. And that was enough to show people that I could do the job, that I was interested in the job, and one thing led to another. And I would say that most of the work I get now is based on who I know rather than what I know. There's like this point of diminishing returns with music. Like music, there's a point like in a skill level, ability to write music, when you're good enough. It doesn't matter if you're the best or if you're just above the line. If you're good enough to score the film, you're good enough. It doesn't matter. You can be the best, you can be not quite as good as the best, but if you're good enough, you can get the work. At that point, it's all about who you know and what projects you actively want to get involved in. Like I mentioned before, being in the right place at the right time, but passionately, not for the sake of getting work for yourself, kind of thing. So yeah, get to know lots of people. That's important, and care about what you're doing, and that's worked for me so far. So that's my start. Brian Andrew Bierma, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Love watching videos. Just ask, if you had to pick only one string library, which would it be? He's currently looking at Cinematic Strings 2 and Lass 2 Lite. Which do I think is a good multi-purpose? If I had to pick between the two you said, I would probably pick Cinematic Strings, just because the tone out of the box is awesome. It's it's very I guess you could say like lush out the box. Lass, I think, is probably it's a lot more harsher out the box. I mean, you can mix it to sound lush or Hollywood or sound good out the box, but Cinematic Strings 2 sounds right out the box, and it's got all the articulations you need. Although it's shorts, and I've spoken to the developer. We're actually quite good friends now. I've spoken to the developer a bit about the short notes, and I think at one point he said he was going to look into those at some point. The short notes in Cinematic Strings are probably the weakest part. They're still good. They're still really good, but Lass has the best short notes I've heard. Very aggressive if you're doing that type of music. If you're doing soft music, not quite as good, but if you're doing the aggressive music that I normally do, Lass is brilliant for that. If you can get both, get both. Seriously, every single piece of music I put out never uses one library exclusively. Like my brass always has Albion, Cinebrass, sometimes Project Sam, Orchestral Brass Classic. Okay, the reason I say it like that is because I used to live up north where you would say brass as brass, and for some reason my brain has like changed into this southern pikey accent. So now when I say classic, because it would have used to have been Orchestral Brass Classic, so now I go Orchestral Brass Classic. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, my strings would always be like Lass and Cinematic Strings 2 and Symphobia, and then my percussion's like every percussion library out there. Winds is always like a mix between Cinewinds Albion again, which is a good sound. So the more you can get, the more layering options you can get, the better off you'll be, because where one is weak, the other is strong, and when you put them together, they sound even bigger or smaller depending on what you need. So, but if I had to pick between the two, I'd go with cinematic strings myself. Mark Lucaken. Sorry, I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. I don't think anybody's called Mark Lucaken. Watching your past vlogs on how you compose the sound for Mega Man movie, and it's been helpful in understanding how to write for film. So what's my thoughts on how games work, and how can you write, like, what's the difference between writing films for games and music, games and films? So the main difference between writing music for films and games is that one's interactive and one is like set in stone. One's to picture, you would say. So films, the sequence of events never changes. It's always, you know, the character gets up, the character shoots the gun, the enemy dies, you know, or whatever. Whereas games, the player might decide he might shoot at the bad guy, but the bad guy misses. You miss the bad guy's still alive, so he runs behind, but now you can't see the bad guy. And so in game music, it's all about the delivery, really, and how you set up your projects. And it's very important, because a lot of times when you're working on games, because of the fact that it could change at any moment, the programmers or the developers will make a sound engine, a music engine that will adapt to how the game's being played. So let me, like, for example, say an action track. So you're in an action film, you've got your action scene, you can hit the cuts, you know, when the character jumps out and he shoots, and then when he's behind, you know, cover, and he's talking to his friend, you can bring in the emotional tones and things. And you only have to write that one piece of music, and it's done, and it's out the door. So game music, the way you would do that is you basically need, there's a few different ways. So you either write like micro cues, you write small little bits of music, like maybe 4 to 8 bars or something, that will loop. So like you'll have like an 8-bar loop of action music, which is very low intensity, you know, like there's action going on, but you're not directly involved in it. And then you might have like another 8-bar loop, which is you're getting close to the action, but you're not quite there yet. Then another 8-bar loop where you're in the action, it's all chaotic. And then like an 8-bar loop where things are a little bit emotional or whatever. And one of the ways the developers do it is you take those 8-bar like loops, and then what will happen is when the scene changes, like when you go from you're hiding behind cover, you're not in action, and then all of a sudden you're in action, it will wait until those 8 bars end, and it will join on the action one. So, you know, it will jump from one cue to the other. And that's one way of doing it. That's where would you normally hear that? I hear that a lot, like in RPGs, you know, like role-playing games. Like, I don't know, Dragon Age for some reason comes to mind. I may be wrong there. And then like when the battle ends, you know, the battle music will carry on till its end, and then you'll hear that dun-dun-dun, and like that little stinger, and it'll go back to like the ambient music or whatever. But another way they do it, and I'm doing quite a lot of this at the minute on some projects I'm doing, is that they will ask you to deliver stems, which is basically, if you don't know what a stem is, it's basically like little cuts of they're like little sub mixes. So say you've written a piece of music, yeah, you could take out just the brass. The brass would be a stem, so all the brass together would be called the brass stem. Or you could take out the strings, that would be the string stem. But when you're composing like an action track, for example, the way you would design it is you want a low intensity stem. So that's like all the strings and all the brass that would be like a low, so not much is going on. And then you want a mid stem, but the mid stem has to stack on top of the low stem. So the low stem will always be playing the whole way through. You know, so you've got your low intensity, and then you need to have elements that would go on top of that to make it feel mid intensity. So maybe some extra percussion or some guitars or something. And then you need high intensity, like things are going off. And then normally for the high, you would put like the really loud drum, you know, the really fast drums or something, and like a really blaring French horn line or something. And so that's stems. Sometimes they ask for like 8 different stems, so 8 different layers. This is, I think this is the most common way of doing it. So, you know, if you can, I'd get some practice at doing this. And the best way to do it, you can't see it here. I'll probably show you. I have a mixer. Oh, there's me on the screen. I have this mixer here. I don't know how well you can see that. But basically, what I do with that is I will put I'll put on it I'll put my stems to a fader each, and the best way to test it is I pull all the faders down and I'll push up the low intensity track, so just that's playing. You know, I'll play like a video trailer or something in the background, and when it gets more intense, I'll push up the mid fader and then see if it feels like, firstly, if it works, you know what I mean, like, or if it's jarring, or if it, because this is the way it would come in game, you know, they would just fade it in. And if it's too jarring, I'll make sure that there's something underneath in the lower intensity, which is like a bigger fit. The biggest culprit in things not working in this like stem format is like if you have a melody, if you have like a big melody, horn melody or something in the high intensity thing, you need to kind of have it subtly going on in the low intensity, because if you come in midway through a phrase, like halfway through, like if you imagine Star Wars, da da da, no, that's Superman, we'll do Superman, da 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 da. If you came in on the da 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 out of the blue, it would sound wrong. But if like you've got in the low intensity, you know, you've kind of led up to it, but subtly in the low intensity, which is quite important. So I'm not sure why I keep scratching my nose. Nervous, that's why. Yeah, so that's, you do the stems like that, and then the high intensity, like everything's going off. So just make sure that they all work together. And the way I do it, that's worked pretty well for me so far, is normally I'll write the high intensity track. So I'll write all my action cues, I'll write as these really big action, you know, everything's kicking off, and I'll do like a 2 or 3 minute piece of music like that, or a 1 minute, depends how long they want. So I'll do the high intensity, and then what I do is I cut away. So I think, okay, what would make this less intense? So I'll take away the blaring French horns and the percussion, you know, the really fast bits of percussion or the really loud bits of percussion, and I'll put those on the high intensity stem, and then I'll mute it. So now I should have left a mid intensity, and you know, I'll know if it feels like a middle intensity type thing. And if that does feel like a middle intensity, then I think, okay, what do I need to take away from this to make it subtle? So I'll take away, like, you know, the other percussion bits that are driving the rhythm, the guitars, or you know, some fast string parts, and I'll bounce those, not bounce, but I'll route those to a mid-intensity stem and mute that. And now what I should be left with is like the sustained string pads, you know, the ambiances, some really subtle percussion, like some airy percussion or whatever, and it should feel low intensity. And if it does, then I just route everything there to the low intensity, and then I should have my 3 stems. And then so I'll just solo the low intensity, bounce that out as a loop, so then solo just the middle one, bounce that out as just the middle track by itself, and then just the high by itself, and then I would deliver those to the client, and they would take that, and then they will say, it's good, it's shit, fix this, can you make the low intensity a bit more intense? In which case I can either pull things from the mid, or I can add things to it and then just check it works. So it's quite complex. I mean, at the end of the day, your role as a composer isn't different between a film and a game. Your role is to provide the emotional context of what's going on. That's all composers do. We should never really be filler. You know what I mean? If you're being filler, the director or the game designer hasn't really, you know, they're trying to make you compensate for something that isn't there. You know, rarely that should be your job. Your job is to let the person playing or the person watching emotionally know the context of the scene, or you know, tricking them to make them think they know what the context of the scene is. You know, should they feel scared here? Not when you say feel scared, you don't go, this is horror music, be scared. You know, how do you unsettle them? How do you, subconsciously make them feel the fear of what's going on screen? How do you make them care for that person? How does this kiss relate? Because like 2 people kissing, you may think, oh, that's romantic. You know, so you play romantic, but maybe there's something wrong with this kiss. Maybe it's a kiss goodbye, you know, which would be very sad. Maybe it's a kiss hello for the first time, which is really joyous. Maybe it's a kiss, but it means something completely different. Maybe the woman has lipstick which kills men when she kisses, in which case it would be a lot of threat. You know, so your job is to let the audience know what that kiss means. And it's the same with game music. You're letting them know what this action scene means. So, and it's very easy, particularly for new composers, to just write big bombastic music. But even action scenes need context, and that's what you as a composer need to figure out with the director. Is this action scene, are you just being the hero there? You're kicking ass, you know, so that needs to be really heroic and, you know, bombastic. The player's never going to lose this. You know, the music tells them that you are the good guy, you're the hero, you're America, or whatever it is, you know, you're the good guys. Or is this a scene where you're in an action scene, but there's a very good chance you'll lose, or you're on your last legs, you know, like the enemy's bearing down on you, and you want to make the player feel like they're fighting for survival. You know, that sounds very different to they're kicking everyone's ass, you know. So context is that, yeah, that's your job regardless of genre. When it comes to game music and film music, the only difference is the delivery. So it's more the technical stuff for games that's different. And I would learn, if you don't already, how to make music loop, because you will be asked to write a lot of loop-based music. Ableton Live actually has a bounce as a loop function, and it does it basically by carrying on all the reverbs and delays. Anything with a tail will be put at the beginning of the piece. So if you've got like a really soft, quiet intro and a really loud ending, you'll have this really big burst of just reverb tails at the beginning. So you need to be careful of things like that. But normally, one way you can do it is if you bounce. This is just a little tip. If you make like an action piece and bounce it, the whole piece with the reverb tails and stuff off the end. If you bounce that and then cut the ending off, like the reverb tails, if you manually cut them off where you want the piece to loop, and then take that ending and make a new audio track and put it underneath, layer it with the beginning, then when you loop it, it should make a seamless loop. Just pro tip. Went a little bit on that one. God, this is 27 minutes already. Okay, video games. Daniel, I have difficulty working with sound design, and I don't really know how to incorporate them into my orchestral writing. Do you have any tips? And that's from Frank H. Working with sound design. So when I'm working with sound design, I don't think of it as a separate thing to orchestra. If I've got a very you would mix it the same way. So like I talk about this a lot, but any piece of music needs a midground, a foreground, and a background. The foreground is the thing that you're listening to, the thing that you're actively hearing, because it's like sight. You can only see one thing at a time. You see everything else around it in your peripheral, but you're only focusing on one thing at a time. And that's the same with your hearing. You can only hear one thing at a time. You hear all the surrounding things, but you're not listening to everything. You're hearing it, but you're not listening. So the foreground is what you're actively listening to. So normally that's something to carry the listener through, so like a melody or a particular sound effect. The midground supports the foreground directly, and sometimes distracts on purposely the listener's attention, you know, for effect, or you're doubling things like counterpoint. And the background is supporting the track. It's the thing that's going on in the background that you're not actively listening to. Normally percussion or rhythms, they will just chug along in the background. They're setting like the context for the foreground. So when I'm doing sound design, I just think of it like that. Is this a foreground element? If it's a foreground element, I will give it its own sound, you know, normally with reverb. When you're doing sound design, reverb, delays, things like that are a good way of setting something in a mix. Like you would with a string. Imagine you had a dry violin sound and you wanted to mix it in with like a string pad that's already got pre-baked reverb. You want to put reverb on the dry string to make it fit within that world. So the same with sound design. If I've recorded, you know, if I've beaten my cello with drumsticks and I want to make, and then I like put bit crusher on it and distortion, and I want to make that fit, I'll make firstly I'll try and sit it in the same kind of audio space, you know, reverb, delays, whatever it takes. And if it's the foreground, I'll make it nice and clean and sit it up front, normally in the middle, or, you know, panning, whatever, but normally up in the middle. If it's a mid-ground element, you want to take some of the highs and some of the volume away, particularly turn it down in the volume. And if it's a background element, one thing, the background element is something a lot of new composers and I still do occasionally, mess up on. And the background, particularly when you're new, there's this real need. You get this like weird desire to make everything as loud as possible. Like everything's fighting to be the focus point. Like you'll make this really cool rhythm or something. You'll be like, everybody needs to hear this. And so you'll just turn it up a little bit more than it should be in the mix. Don't do it. Turn it down. If it's a cool sound, people will notice it, like when they're listening intently. If that's not the point of that sound, don't try and make it a foreground element if it's designed to be a background element. If it's, if you're chugging along, tapping the desk or whatever it is, just turn it down, firstly mix it and stuff as if it was loud, and then turn it down, and then just turn it down too far. Normally what I'll do is I'll turn it down all the way, and then I'll bring it up until I can just hear it, or when I feel it's hearing it. And then when you get it at a point where you think it feels right, listen to the track on loop for a little while and then mute it, and then see if you notice a difference. If you don't notice it, then it's too quiet, you know what I mean? If nothing happens, it's gone completely. But you just need that little subtle thing. I talk about it a lot in my complete video. I do like this weird like hi-hat type thing in the hi-hat, in this little hi-hat thing. It's it's a very subtle thing, but because it's doubling the strings, it's doing its job as a background element, just making it feel more rhythmic, more strong. And it's so far in the background, but when you mute it, you can tell it's, you feel like the track's just lost something all of a sudden. And when you turn it back on, you can't really hear it per se, because it's mixed in with everything else and it's doubling things. But when you take it away, you notice. So yeah, just make sure it sits in the audio space, and you have to make a decision if it's fore, mid or background. And if it's mid or background, you have to force it into mid and background. Don't turn it up loud just because you want people to hear it. If you want people to hear it, put the focus on it, build everything around that sound. But don't try and have two things be foreground at the same time if they're not directly working with each other, because it will just make it sound messy, and the listener won't know what they're supposed to listen to, and then they'll react to it in a negative kind of way. Questions for my vlog. Okay, I'll only do, how many have I got? I'll do 2 more because we're 30 minutes in. If you're still with me, by the way, hey, how's it going? Okay, did you train in music school? What courses did you take? Piano arrangement, composition, engineering. Do you recommend specific books that you like, or training videos? So, and that was by Rathorn. Did I go to music school? Yes, in a kind of weird way. I went to the first time I actually ever did music education, like proper formal music education, was I went to college for it, which is a weird place to start. I didn't really study at school. I think we had like music lessons, but it wasn't any, I didn't learn anything. They were like watching videos. I don't know. Anyway, so high school, I didn't learn music or anything. And so I think I was 17, 18 when I learned what a crotchet was, or a quarter note, which is very late in the game. And I went to college to learn to be, it was a practical music course. It was a really good practical music course, actually, now I think about it. But so I was learning to be like a working musician, like to either be like a touring band or a session musician, or learning to be a pub singer, pub band, function band, play at weddings and things like that. That's what I was learning to be, and I was learning to be a singer. Funny enough, because I'd done like some band things before, I'd never learnt before then. And what did we learn? We learned music theory. I think I learned up to grade. I started off really well, but then I wasn't a very good student. Academics and me never really mixed well together. So we learned some music theory, which is very important. It's music theory. A lot of people refuse to learn music theory because they think it'll damage their ability to improvise or something like that. It really doesn't. Music theory, the more music theory you know, the more you understand about what you're doing. So you'll do something like improv, like you'll improvise something, and later on you'll be like, oh, I did like an inversion here, I did a modulation, and the next time when you want to do something like that, you'll remember back to what you did, but because you learned how to do it, you'll know quicker how to do it again instead of just doing, repeating what you did. You'll know like how it was built. We learned keyboard skills. That was one. Piano skills, I think it was called. I don't have any grades in piano. That's why I'm still a very bad piano player. So most of it's self-taught. The best thing you can do actually is learn how chords are built on a piano, and then that instantly makes it easy to improvise. Once you understand how a chord is built on a piano and where all the keys are, everything else kind of falls into place. We learned transcription. So they will play a bit of music and you transcribe. Singing, I learnt to sing. Not very well. I'm not a very good singer, hence why I'm a composer now and not a musician. And we learnt some composition, but not like composition that I do now. In fact, my lowest grade was in composition, funny enough, and now I do it for a living. But yeah, so the music education I had wasn't specifically for this, but it only helped. Any music education you have will help in the long run. Like, for example, I learned to sing. So when you learn to sing, part of what you have to learn to do is harmonize, like in your head. So when you hear someone singing, you can already hear the note that harmonizes with what they're singing. So when I'm writing music, if I play a melody line, I can hear in my head a harmony to it, because that's like what I was taught to do, hear the harmony. So, I mean, that's been invaluable to me personally, Other than that, just being around musicians was important. I've never been taught to compose. I've never been taught to, compose film music. I've never been taught the technical things. I learned all just by doing, or YouTube, or reading up on things, being involved in a message board like VO Control Forum, where you can ask the professionals, like the other professionals. I mean, like, technically I would probably be in the professional category now, but asking people who are experienced, they will answer those for you. Yes, I had some musical education, but not for composition. And the more music education you have, the more knowledgeable you'll be. You know what I mean? It won't hurt you at all. It's just so long as you keep an open mind. Remember that in music there's no rules, there's only conventions, things that people have done before and things that people aesthetically like. The 5 chord to the 1 chord is a pleasing sound. Mathematically it's a pleasing sound, but that doesn't mean it's right. If you want to go 5 to the flat dominant 7th, knock yourself out. Be the pioneer, make it work. That's creativity. That's the difference between a painted portrait that's perfectly realistic and a Picasso where he just kind of did that shit. One isn't necessarily better than the other, they're different. So music education, not vital but important, but it's very important, and it can only help. So yes, that wasn't the question, but yeah. Okay, this will be the last one. The Rasmus Fours says, since Project Alpha sold so well, will you guys do more sample library development in the future? Project Alpha did okay. It was good. We're a no-name company. It sold pretty well, actually. It sold more. We had a limit of how many we wanted to sell, and we met our target. So so we were over the moon about that. Will we do more? We want to do more. We've got some ideas in the works, but before we do that, we're patching Alpha, which is still coming, by the way. We're working on it, but we've basically had to rewrite the whole. Well, I say we. Aaron's doing the scripting. Aaron's had to rewrite the way the internal clock syncs with the host for the arpeggiator and the gate. And that's taking a little bit longer than we expected. But first we want to patch that and just make sure that, if we're making new sounds, that people get new sounds in that first, because we don't want to just make one and then rush out another one, for the sake of profit. We want people to feel like, they've earned the product. The reaction to Project Alpha has been amazing. And those of you who bought it, seriously, thanks. To those of you that pirated it, God, I'll get you. But yeah, we're planning. We've got ideas for what we want to do in the next one. and how we're making it different from this one and still worthwhile. Okay, so the next question, we had a little cutout there. What do you think about the controversial release of EastWest Hollywood Orchestral woodwinds? And is the wise thing to be skeptical to upcoming EastWest releases like Storm Jung 3 and Forbidden Planet? And last, how do you think hybrid scoring will evolve over the years? Is it just a modern trend soon to be forgotten, or is it going to be more common? Okay, so firstly, should you be skeptical of EastWest woodwinds? No. I mean, I have my issues with EastWest play because it doesn't work for me. You know, there's lots of people that agree with me, lots of people that disagree with me. You know, it works for a lot of people. You have to find out for yourself if, like, particularly the play engine will work for you. If it does, then it's all about the sound. If you like the sound of an EastWest product, buy an EastWest product. You know, it's all well and good for what I like. You know, I have my own personal tastes of brass, strings, and woodwinds. But if you hear, like, a lot of people say to me, should I buy Hollywood strings? And I always try and tell them, you know, it doesn't work for me, so I wouldn't personally buy it. But it's not you know, I'm not using it. It's you. If you think the sound of Hollywood orchestral woodwind sounds amazing, and you want that sound, then, you know, do your homework first. Check to see if that if that library will work on your system. See if it will work flawlessly, and if it does, or even if it works just well enough, it works well enough for you. So then buy it. You know, you're only shooting yourself in the foot if you bow to other people's opinions. You know, if you go through life just listening to what other people say, you know, you'll never live your own life. You'll always, you know, live on what other people tell you should do. If you want something, you get it. You know. The question was, should you be skeptical? No, you shouldn't be skeptical, but you should always do your homework and see if it will work for you. If it works for you, then why not? You know. The only reason I don't buy them is because they don't work on my particular machine. I love the sound of Hollywood strings and Hollywood brass, but, you know, because they don't work for me, I don't buy them. But you're not me. You may have a better machine. You may have, like, the split systems, you know, have the samples on one machine streaming onto your others. I mean, if that's what you've got, and, you know, it'll work better for you than it does for me, you may have a great time. So be skeptical, no. Do your homework, yes. And how do I think hybrid scoring will evolve over the years? Is it just a modern trend? So modern scoring, as you hear it now, I think will just be a trend. It will go out of fashion the way it is right now. However, bits of it, and the good bits of it, will last from now until forever. And the best example I can think about is think about what film scores sounded like when synthesizers that first came out. That was a big trend then, but you don't hear scores like that anymore. However, you do hear echoes of what they did back then in today's music. Today's music is an evolution of the synths back then, and the synths back then were actually quite revolutionary. However, you would still kind of keep that classical music, you know, well, not classical music, but you would, like, I think what I'm trying to say is that no musical trend will die out completely. It will just move into the next thing. Whatever the next thing is, will have hints of the modern scoring, as we call it now, the Bram age. It'll probably have hints of, like, the dubstep and, you know, really aggressive popular music that's come out of this kind of generation. That will be within the film score of tomorrow, not as it is now. You won't hear Skrillex in tomorrow's type music, but you'll hear, like, remnants of those aggressive synths or those big drums will probably be in some of the action films, or like the cool, you know, like driving films or whatever of the future. You'll still hear, like, classical type music, the orchestra, the brass. They'll still be around in some fashion, you know, echoes of them. The synthesizers from the, you know, 70s, 80s, and, you know, the guitars of the 90s and the noughties, they're going to carry on. They just won't exist in the fashion that they do now, in my opinion. That, you know, it will evolve. Music will always keep evolving. Otherwise, we'd just be stuck with the exact same music over and over again, because there'll come a saturation point. I think we're already in the saturation point, particularly in the Bram age, you know, with all the Brahms and stuff. You know, that thing's, because people get bored of it, you know. So what's more exciting now? You know, really over aggressive dubstep synths. I mean, dubstep now in trailers is already on a decline, you know, because it's reached that saturation point where people are bored of it. What can be more exciting than dubstep? So some people are like, well, let's just go the complete opposite direction. Let's go really quiet. So you'll have like a spell of really quiet music, and then like you'll have like when that gets boring, you'll have an evolution of that. You'll have maybe dubstep with the soft, you know, like classical dubstep. Things keep evolving as people try to be more original. So it's very hard to be a true original. You know, because to be a true original, you have to not think about anything else. You have to just almost subconsciously just play something, you know, make a noise. That's the only way you could really be truly original. Even then, you're still not being totally original. The only way to be truly original is to like create the instruments yourself, create the way you play them yourself. So you're always going to be basing whatever you do on something else. But so yeah, the trend of now will fade out, and it won't be as it is now. So you know, so I better start learning, because I'm a lot of my sound is that modern right now sound. But you know, so just always keep your eye looking forward. You know, like what's big in popular music right now. What's unique about the music that people want to listen to right now. Incorporate some of that into your music. It may feel wrong at first, but you know, eventually someone will get that spark, and it will set the fire. And then when that fire burns out, you know, from the embers of that, someone will light a new fire, and it will just carry on like that forever. So people say that music now is boring. People have been saying that forever. People were saying that in the 70s. People were saying, I wasn't around in the 70s. I was born in the 80s. But, you know, people in the 80s were saying, oh, this music's a bit boring. Then someone came along with something new. And then like in the 90s, people were like, hey, this music's cool. And then it got boring. And then like pop music happened, you know, Britney Spears happened. Then that became the thing. But then that isn't the thing anymore. And then it grew. And then dubstep became a big thing for a short while. And then it went to something else. So it's just going to keep rolling. And it will always echo what came before. So, you know, yeah. So my thought is that it won't exist the way it is now, but it will continue to evolve, as music always will and always has and always will. So yeah, this has been an epic blog, and I thought I'd do a long one, you know, to compensate for the fact that I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks, week or two. But yeah, I should still be hanging around social media, because I have to do things. You know, social media is what I do when the computer's bouncing out a track, which takes forever. When you've got like plus 200 track projects, you know, they take forever to export. So so yeah, I hope this answered your questions. If you've got any more, maybe when I come back from this epic workload that I have right now, once I've finished all of it, perhaps I'll be able to talk about some of it, which will be fun, because some of the projects are really exciting. Some of the projects I've been dying to do for years. You know, so I'm getting to do the kind of stuff that I wanted to do for a long time. Hopefully I'll get to talk about what those are. And if you have any more questions, particularly on anything I said today, ask them. And like, I'm always on the Twitter and on the Facebook and stuff. I think on Twitter I'm H2Daniel, at H2Daniel. If you follow me there, that's the best way to kind of keep up with my thoughts, because you know, it's easy for me to tweet when I'm waiting for something to bounce down. So yeah, I hope you guys have liked watching this little video today. Watching this blog today. And I'll see you pretty soon. Okay, see ya.